Okay. Anyway,
Yep.
and live recording. Ah, sorry. Okay. Live recording.
There's a button that's at least on the bottom of my screen next to share screen. It says record.
Share screen. Where the share screen?
Share screen is where I share my PowerPoint.
Ah,
So,
okay. Ah,
right?
okay. Okay. Yeah, it's okay.
All
Now
right.
we should start. Okay, Marco, good morning. Oh, good evening.
Good
Yeah,
evening.
thank you for joining and holding this webinar. I think your last story, that your last speech, last webinar was warmly accepted. Many people was, okay, good, well understood. Yeah, yeah, partly because the topic was very fresh at that time, and even today it's very important and should be fresh. So I got a very good feedback about your webinar, your speech. So thank you for that. So again, today, I also appreciate that you're joining here all the way from Boston, even in a Sunday night. Yeah.
I didn't
So
have to get on a plane, so it's okay.
that's no jet lag, no jet lag.
Right.
Okay. So let us start. So thank you, Marco. Now you can share your screen. Thank you.
Okay. I can't share it. You have to activate something at your end. You have to enable
Moment.
me to share my screen. Sorry, we should have tested
All
it.
the panelists. Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
yes. Now I can do it.
Now you
Yep.
can. Yes. Please.
Okay. Except the problem is it's showing your desktop, not mine.
Not yours.
Uh,
Sorry. It looks like yours, right?
I don't know. Nope. Let's see.
I see. It's a
See if I
Mac.
do my desktop. Let's see.
Mac screen. Yes, yes,
Do you see it?
yes. I do
Okay.
see it. Yes.
All right. Excellent. All right.
Production
Great.
print manufacturer financial models for post-coronavirus recession. To yes, I
Okay.
clearly see. Yeah.
Great. All right. So welcome. Thank you for joining us. Today, I will talk a little bit about what we believe will happen across the various applications and what it means in terms of financial consequences for all the various digital printing equipment manufacturers. So what we've done is we've come up with a model, and it's just a model, unsure, of course, if this will happen. But what we'd like to do is tell you a little bit about each of these 15 markets. So on the left, there is a revenue number, and that is the 2019 worldwide manufacturer revenues. So that's for hardware plus ink and toner and service for each of the various applications. And what it says is that in total for these 15 applications, the equipment manufacturers in 2019 generated about $13.8 billion. Now, the key, however, is to look at it by application, right? Because some of these applications are much bigger in terms of the amount of revenue they generate than others. For example, I am continually surprised at how large wide format graphics remain after all those years. It is by far the largest market. And then you've got other markets that you think, are quite large, like UV label inkjet printing. And it turns out they're not very large at all, relatively speaking, to these other markets. So what we'll do is, let me tell you a little bit about each of these markets so we understand the definitions. And then we'll take a look at the factors that are going to drive the growth or slow the growth, depending on what's happening in the market specifically for these applications. So first of all, definitions. So a document EPDP, funny abbreviation. So those are digital color presses, and that would include Indigo, Zycon, Nexpress, iGen. So these are the traditional digital color presses.
Mm-hmm.
The
Okay.
document higher MFP, it's a silly
Okay.
way of saying basically these are the $200,000, well, $100,000 or more copier MFPs, like a Konica Minolta BizHub 6000 series or a Ricoh C9200.
Mm-hmm.
Those
Mm-hmm.
would be the products that are very competitive with digital color presses.
Yeah.
And they're not the type of copier MFP that you would find in an office.
Mm-hmm.
So these are truly graphic arts quality products.
Yeah.
Then we have continuous feed inkjet, which is number 3,
Yeah.
which is roll to roll, right? Mainly used for transaction and direct mail and book printing.
Mm-hmm.
There's cut sheet or CS inkjet, and that would include things like the VarioPrint i300, the Fujifilm J-Press, and the Landa machines.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Label EP, that's basically Indigo label printers and Zycon label printers. So those are the two products in that. Then label UV inkjet would include a whole list of products, including screens, 350 series, the Zycon Panther series, Domino, of course, is in that, Durst, and others.
Yeah.
FP is a horrible abbreviation, but it stands for flexible packaging. So, and the only product really in that category today is Indigo. So it's the Indigo 20,000 because there's hardly
now it's
any.
coming. Now many people are joining. Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
But it's not there yet as of 2019 revenues.
Okay. Right.
Right? Corrugated packaging, that would include EFI Nozomi, HPC 500, and the T1100 series, Arboran, and about 5 or 6 others. So that's an emerging market. It's not quite established, but there seems to be a lot of interest, particularly at the moment, in terms of the throughput on these devices. Not a lot of new sales, but the existing units are being used. Then we have textile. We have our standard roll-to-roll with dye diffusion and dye dispersion inks and reactive dye inks and the likes. So these are really MS and Reggiani and of course Robustelli and Nassinger, right? Then we have textile, DTG, and that would be products like Brother, Garmin printers, or Kornit, or Epson, of course, in that space, and Ricoh Anajet.
Yeah.
There's textile DS. DS stands for dye sublimation. So those are Mamaki, Roland, Muto, Epson dye sublimation, as well as like the Fab Review from EFI and so forth.
I'm a little bit surprised to see that standard dye like Konica Minolta Nassinger or that type of product, and DTG is quite similar number, and dye sublimation is even more than standard dye. So I was involved only the category 9 standard dye, and the DTG was so big now, and dye sublimation is already exceeding that.
So I can tell you why. So the dye sublimation number is bigger, in part because the machine cost is so much less expensive. So there's quite a high number of units sold.
Right.
And the average selling price of the ink is also significantly higher in that space. So that I do understand that the DTG number does look high. It must be correct if we put it in there, but it does look a little bit high to me. Kornit, is about 25% of that number.
Okay.
And the others, I'm not quite sure what's going on there.
Brother, Epson, Ricoh.
Right.
These people.
So, okay. Well, I'll double check that.
Yeah.
We do, wide format I know is correct.
Yeah.
And wide format inkjet CAD is correct. By the way, CAD, that's really only a market for 2 or 3 vendors, right? It's HP, which has about 70% share, Canon, and Epson. So only 3 players, but a very, very large market. I can imagine. A bit of an artificial definition, by the way, because many of these units, which we define as CAD because they have 4 color, are being used now as graphic printers.
Graphic as well,
Any FedEx, Kinko's, or Staples or Office Max in the US,
Yeah, yeah.
you will have basically CAD inkjet printers producing posters.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
So they're blending a little bit. Then there's ceramics, which is also quite large. A lot of that, of course, is in China.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, that seems to be coming back fairly quickly in the vendors we've talked with. And I suppose it's in part because the Chinese government is pushing hard to reopen things and
Okay.
start production. So ceramics seems to be coming back pretty quickly as a result of that. And then last is other, and other really includes mainly 3D printing. There's a little bit of decorative laminates, glass printing, wood printing, deposition. There's lots of experimental things in there. So it looks like a big category, but it's really, really fragmented.
Yeah. Very fragmented. I do understand. But I think, yeah, this list is already very interesting topic to discuss. We dig into each individual. I think this is very, very informative and interesting. Thank you.
Well, let me tell you a little bit more. So the next slide, what we'll tell you is some of the factors that you have to look at in terms of the trends in the market. So it's a bit of a busy chart, but you're welcome to have it, of course. What this basically, let me see if I can explain it. So we've tried to use green for positive and red for negative or slow, right, to sort of influence things. So it's a negative factor. And we've come up with a number of categories, which you'll see at the bottom here. So there's consumer discretionary market, meaning it's a market where a lot of the volume of print in that space is tied to the general economy overall. So if there is no retail open, that means there's no wide format graphics being printed, right? So direct mail, right? There is no direct mail being printed. So that's an issue. The other side of that would be the supply chain necessary, meaning for transaction print, they are still printing your bills, whether you like it or not. Every time that bill shows up, and oh, by the way, sadly, if you don't pay the bill because you don't have a job, you will get a second bill and a reminder note. So the volume of transaction printing is actually very strong at the moment.
Reminder.
Yes, exactly.
Reminder.
Then there's some primary consumer necessity. Basically, what that's all about is packaging. So in other words, the digital printing of packaging and packaging in general has been incredibly strong, in part because we've seen much of our purchasers shift to eating at home. So instead of big bags for institutions, for restaurants, now you have many, many small bags. And so you need a lot more of that. And as a result, that business has been very, very steady. So anything related to packaging tends to be quite strong. Then we looked at things like the amount of money a new press might cost you. So when it has a high capital investment cost, meaning you buy a device effectively over $250,000, that means it's probably going to be slow to come back, right? Because there's a lot of used equipment available in the market today. And people are not necessarily reinvesting as quickly. But I have to tell you, we've done a series of interviews in the last 2 weeks asking print providers, how long will you hold on to your existing presses, right? Because our big concern was that people are going to say, well, I used to hold on to it for 5 years, but now I will hold on for 7 years. But all the 80% of the people we interviewed said, no, probably about 5 years, because in 5 years, the technology will be that much better, right? Less expensive. And so I'll have to buy something new. So just because it's bad right now doesn't mean that I'll extend how long I hold on to my equipment. So that's good news. The bad news, of course, is not many of them are saying they're going to buy anything this year. But okay, we'll talk about that in a second. So then if there's lower capital investment, that means that it's easier to buy. So for example, wide format graphics printers, most of them are relatively inexpensive. So they should come back pretty quickly as the market recovers. And then last, there's markets that are well established, meaning that, you know, there's a rhythm to it. Those that are not well established would include things like flexible packaging, right? Because it's really
Very
only
good. Yet, yeah.
at this point, and it's all a bit experimental still. Same with inkjet flexible packaging, right? It's still very, very early.
Yeah.
And then, and that's the unestablished market. And the big concern we have there when it comes to things like flexible packaging and even corrugated is they're so new, right? Will people continue to invest as much money into those markets as they were before? We don't know, right? So because we don't know, we've said, well, that could be a negative.
Yeah. Okay.
So this gives you a little bit of an overview of the total sort of factors. And then the bars on the right show you how many positives and how many negatives.
How many negatives? Okay.
You know, but basically, you can't really draw good conclusions of this because we added them up and then said, okay, this, you know, if you add the positive and the negative, then this is what the market looks like. I think the way to interpret this is for things like textile, for example. That's going to be a very difficult market for inkjet to come back to, in part because you've got both a supply problem and a demand problem. On the supply side, many of the equipment manufacturers are Italian, right, in the hardest hit area of Italy. And so they're not going to come back very quickly. Then on the other side, you have the demand problem, meaning that consumers are not buying as much clothing because they're not going to work. They're working from home.
Exactly.
So they don't need as much clothing. And many of them don't have the money to spend on clothing, so they're just wearing what they have. So that's those are two problems, and then on top of it all, you've got an infrastructure problem because, for example, in North America, we believe there'll be 300 retailers or fashion brands that will be out of business before the end of 2020. Because, you know, if you're a retailer, right, a fashion brand, and first of all, you're sitting on all your spring clothing because you didn't sell in March and April. So now you've got existing inventory that has to be deeply discounted.
Yeah, sure.
Number two, you don't have the money to now pay for the fashions that you're going to need in the fall, right, to place the orders. And number three, over 90% of clothing, in at least in the US, and I bet you it's a higher number in Japan and Europe, is still bought in stores. And many of these stores, like Zara or Uniqlo, they're in the very expensive shopping districts. And so the rent is killing them. So, you know, it's a perfect storm. So that, unfortunately, is probably the one market that's going to take the longest to recover. So let's look at a little bit more detail specifically for some of these applications. So if you now look at the macro drivers, meaning, you know, what are the specific things that cause people to buy print in those markets? First of all, we had the first category in the top is sports slow to recover, meaning if we don't have football games, we don't have the Olympics, we don't have concerts, that means there's no wide format signage. So that is going to be an application within specifically wide format that's going to be very hard hit. And that will take a while for it to come back. Right? Until the vaccine, there's probably not many big events, right, that people attend. Then you've got the issue of, you know, where that print is bought or used. So again, in retail shops, right, most retail shops have been closed for 3 months. Now we're slowly reopening, thankfully. Restaurants are slowly reopening. But, you know, they haven't bought anything for 3 months. So effectively, we've lost 25% of our revenue this year just through retail closings alone. And the same holds for you know, document digital color press, because a lot of that was related to direct mail and marketing collateral. And very few people were buying direct mail or marketing collateral at the moment. So that's slow to recover. Then you've got you know, other events, not just sports, but trade shows, for example. We were talking a little bit earlier about Drupa. We're all very fearful because if Drupa doesn't happen, there may not ever be another drupa, right, beyond 2021. And you know, I think most of the major digital equipment vendors, plus offset press vendors, are going to cut back dramatically for Drupa 2021 in terms of the amount of equipment they're going to bring and staff, because the number of attendees will probably be a lot less. So, you know, it's there's a big question as to how viable these events really will be.
Yes. Yeah.
Then there's you know, entertainment issues at home, meaning, you know, are you buying clothes, right? Are you you know, buying magazines, books, and the likes? Books, by the way, are doing really, really well, both in the US and in Europe, digital book printing. And one of the reasons is that you cannot get books shipped out of China very fast. Everything coming out of China is delayed. So
yes, that's true.
if you have an order for a book, right, the only way to get it is to print it digitally here, locally. So the book market has been very, very strong, except the educational book market. So
educational book market. Oh, okay.
Educational book market is terrible because many of the schools, right, they depend on tax generation. But if the state and the government is not collecting as much tax because the restaurants aren't open and the retailers aren't open, right, and people don't have jobs, so they're not paying as much tax, that becomes a huge problem. So the school budgets are cut. Yeah. And most of the schools have said, instead of ordering books, which they should have done by now, by the way, because school starts right here in Europe in September. Yeah. So if you want your new books in September, you have to order them in May. Okay. No orders, because all of the schools are basically saying, we'll skip a year, we'll reuse the books that we had last year to save money.
Okay. That's the way.
Yeah, so the educational book market is really hard hit, but the trade book market, you know, for reading, because you can only watch so many TV shows or Netflix, right? So people are reading more, which is very nice. So that's been good. Then you've got markets that are really connected to travel. So for example, DTG, right? A lot of t-shirts are bought when people are traveling as tourists. So a lot of clothing, a lot of luxury brands are bought when people travel. So those are really hard hit. Then you've got the issue of the number of print shops that are going to be left. So many businesses in the commercial print industry, especially both in Europe and in the US, frankly, weren't very profitable, particularly those that are very offset driven. And we believe that up to 20% of commercial printers might close their doors. Yeah. Either will get acquired by somebody or they'll just shut down. Yeah,
that's possible.
There'll be a lot that go out of business. And so that will slow dramatically the amount of new equipment that gets bought. Yeah. Because if we're right, and I hope we're not, but if we're right and 20% of shops go away, that means that you will have lost effectively close to 20% of your customers. Right? So that's not good. So that affects all of these markets, particularly the very expensive machines. By the way, some of these markets, like CAD, we don't know if this will happen, but there's a lot of hope that the governments around the world will put more money into infrastructure, meaning they're going to build new roads, new bridges, and they're going to need a lot of CAD drawings for that. So there's a hope, and we know of some incidences where, like, for example, the state of California, they just placed an order, I think, for 500 new inkjet printers.
Really?
So, right, so some things might be okay, but these are exceptions, not the norm. The other market that's doing very well is anything relating to pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, right? Pharmaceutical always, drugs,
and the reason why production inkjet is doing well in that space is you need a lot of directions. Right? Yeah. Here are your safety notes. So there's a lot of paperwork that needs to be printed to go along with those medicines.
That's true.
Then you've got COVID-related signage. So as these retailers open up, everybody has to have a sign that says, here are the rules, right? You have to keep 1.5 meters apart or 6 feet apart. You have to wear a mask. You have to do this.
Yes.
So, the amount of COVID signage is incredible.
Exactly.
And,
I know some sign shop in
as you
Japan.
pointed out,
What they are printing now is here. You can take out lunch, and here is that we have mask.
yeah,
That's very
exactly.
busy. Yeah.
Yes, and of course, people are printing the masks now too.
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So
That's true.
it's funny in a way, because one of the commercial printers we talked with last week said they are printing masks, but they're being very careful to say that they are for fun parties, meaning that they're scared that they're actually not all that safe. Yes, it's a mask, but it's not very tight, so air gets in, and
Oh
so
yeah. Okay.
it's just for you. If you want to have a company event, you can have your company name on the mask, and everybody has the name of the company.
So it's a
But
kind of masquerade. New
yes,
masquerade.
exactly. Yes, that
Okay.
yep.
Okay. That's great.
But there's a lot of that going on, so that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
And then we have markets that have been affected because they're either online deliveries or and that kind of thing. So labels are strong in that space. And then last we have construction, of course, and that's where we're seeing some CAD activity. But that may not be long-term, maybe some short-term orders, but long-term, we think construction will be slow, right? As the economy is certainly weak. So the number of new skyscrapers and things that will be built will probably be less in the next few years. So again, we've ranked them and rated them, and the ratings basically are more or less the same, although there's certainly a little bit more positive for those applications that are what we call functional, meaning you have to send the bills, people want to read a book. So these are the drivers. So what does this now all mean in numbers? And this is why you're here, right? You want to know what we think is going to happen to the revenue. So what actually, before I do that, I forgot. Here's a little bit more commentary in each of the markets, and then we'll get to the revenue.
Oh yeah. Okay.
All right. So document EP, digital color presses. So this market, frankly, was a market that was already in trouble. iGen had been in decline for quite some time because there had been almost no reinvestment in the technology by Xerox. Nexpress was fading. Zycon was focusing very much on labels for a while. So it was really just Indigo in that space. And Indigo, frankly, wasn't doing very well in the document space.
Really? Okay.
In part, well, there's really two reasons, and this is our opinion. They would probably disagree with this, but we believe one of the things that happened was when they shifted from B3 to B2 machines,
yes,
they didn't really get a whole lot of new first-time customers. So they got mainly existing customers that traded in two B3s for one B2. Now, by the way, that B2 machine, of course, has a much lower running cost. So yes, volumes went up slightly, but I think at the end of it all, it was basically even. They didn't really grow their revenues very much in the document space.
Okay.
Now, they did fine in labels, right? That market continues to grow, and that's a very strong market.
Yeah.
But in the document market, frankly, the problem is that these machines are just too expensive for first-time customers who have not yet entered. And so that's where you saw a lot of these, Ricoh C9200s and the BizHub 6000s and the likes do very, very well. Even Heidelberg, right, which has never done well in digital printing, has done amazingly well selling the Versifier copier MFP. And it's because it's at a price point of $250,000. That's within reach, right? If you invest in something like that, you can do very good quality work. Yeah, not that much, but you're not going to lose your business because you can't afford to pay for the payments, right? So I think that all of these digital press guys have been hit very hard by the higher end copier MFPs. They've taken a lot of share. So that market was in trouble to begin with. You've got production continues feed inkjet. That market overall is very stable. In part, again, much of the work there today, about a third, is transaction statements, and that business is fine. Books are actually growing. Book pages could be up as much as 25% this quarter because people want just-in-time delivery. The only area that's not doing well in this space is direct mail. Now, in theory, that should come back, right? As the retail shops open up, they're going to want to advertise. One of the things that businesses are finding is that the internet advertisements, right, mobile advertisements, people are starting to tune them out. So clothing, right? You can get your favorite shirt for 50% discount, but even at 50%, people aren't buying it. So they're tuning it out. So a lot of the clothing retailers are now saying, I think we better go back to direct mail to see if we can, play around with the offers and get people excited about things a little bit more. So that will come back. Then we've got label, right? And both toner machines and UV inkjet are doing just fine. And in part, they're probably doing even better now because of all the short runs. Right? And we're back ordered and it's the last minute and somebody has to rush it out. So a label fits really well. So that's doing great. The area that we are most interested in long-term, not short-term, but long-term, is flexible packaging. Because it is the largest packaging application out there, right? It's bigger than labels and folding cartons and the likes. Packaging, flexible packaging is made from oil, right? It's very cheap, right? Because there's lots of oil. Now, it's difficult to recycle at the moment. Although they are working on coming up with different types of films that are recyclable. I think the reality is, and this is not, politically correct, but I think it's going to be very difficult to recycle. Not so much because of the material, but mainly because, and maybe this is a U.S. view, but in the U.S. we have no recycling facilities. Recycling was sent to China, and China stopped accepting U.S. Recyclables.
Garbage,
they were contaminated. Right? And so now all of a sudden, basically in the U.S. the recycling is thrown away into the dump. It's not being recycled because there's no money to pay for recycling. And so is this important that flexible film needs to be recycled? It is important. Will it happen quickly? I'm not so sure. So anyway, people love flexible packaging also because you can put things in very small containers. And just like, HP is a great example. They sell all those little DeskJet cartridges for the equivalent of, $3,000 per liter because it comes in a really small package. And the same with flexible packaging. The more you can put in flexible packaging in small pouches, the more you can charge per equivalent weight.
Right.
So anyway, people love it. We need to really have some breakthroughs with inkjet because while Indigo has, done well in that space with one big customer, it's a company called EPAC. And they have now, I think, about 20 machines from Indigo. And they claimed before the COVID virus hit that they were going to have 50 machines by the end of the year. Now, I don't think that's likely at this point. But, they found a unique niche in a regional market, meaning so they have factories in Boston and Minneapolis and Detroit and Chicago and places, and they serve mainly artisanal food manufacturers. So those are people who make like special dried mango chips. Basically they're startup companies that make very, local food, like microcraft breweries, right? Except that comes in glass or cans. But this is anything like potato chips and things, coffee. So that market is growing. The problem is that the Indigo technology, frankly, is too slow, right? Because you can't scale it. If you are, Procter & Gamble or Unilever, and you want to use an Indigo machine, you have to have a very niche product. It's just too slow.
Too slow? Oh, okay.
So that's why inkjet's going to be so important. Because inkjet, in theory, right, if we do well, and this is R&D, right, all the engineers have to solve this, but if the engineers solve the ability to print with water-based ink on film, right, which means you have to have lots of pre-coats or additives in the inks and the likes, and if you could print that at, let's say, upwards of 200 meters a minute or more, you will be at least 3 to 4 times faster than an indigo, right? And so, but now you can start addressing these bigger consumer good manufacturers because you've got the capability, right, and the speed. So anyway, inkjet is going to be tremendously important. There's demand for it. The problem is, can we make such technology? Right?
Okay.
This is not easy. This is rocket science. Probably the most
rocket science. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the most difficult thing we've done, right? Is trying to print with billions of droplets per second on a non-porous substrate that doesn't like water.
Nothing is impossible. Yeah.
Well, it's not impossible, but it's not easy, right? So,
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, so but very important.
Yeah.
All right. Corrugated. So corrugated inkjet at the moment is doing very well for those who own these machines. And the reason is very simple. Supermarkets, right, are still open. They never close.
Yeah.
So supermarkets need the end display cap and they need the shelf tray where you have, 12 bottles in a little carton that you slide right onto the shelf. Those are called shelf trays. So, and the reason why that's so important is because it's very hard to find employees, right? Demographically, we've got a problem. There's not enough young people who want those jobs. In the US, we have no immigration, right? It's terrible. So we have no people who typically do these jobs. So anyway, we need these shelf trays, these corrugated shelf trays. We need the end caps. And more importantly, all the supermarkets want to make sure they promote things very visibly so that when you go into the store, you see it, you grab it and you leave. Because today, nobody wants to spend a lot of time in the supermarket because it's dangerous. Because it's
right? Now, yes.
So corrugated inkjet has been really strong. Except, of course, nobody's buying a new press because it's a high capital investment. And so, it's okay on the ink side. It's not so good on the hardware side. Then we have textile, and we've talked about that a lot already. That's going to take a while for that to come back. By the way, there's another factor that's going to affect this market, and that is, much of the inkjet digital textile print was aimed at fast fashion, right? Those were apparels, dresses, and the likes that would be offered, very short turnaround, very limited quantities, and companies like Uniqlo and Zara and H&M basically conditioned their customers to, if you see it today, you like it, you better buy it today because tomorrow will be gone. And they were very fast cycles. And it was all about fashion, right? Well, guess what's happened now? Those manufacturers that are left, the brands, they don't want fast fashion. They want things that are called evergreen fashions, meaning you don't go out of style. Right? So now I'm not tied to the spring market or the summer. I want something that's timeless. So you're going to see a lot more black dresses rather than black dresses that have flowers on them.
I think it has been already often told that fast fashion. So inkjet saves water pollution and saves energy, whatsoever. That is eco, but at the same time, fast turnaround is okay, buy and okay, throw away, buy, throw away. Is it really eco? Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
I think Gen Z and the millennials are waking up to the fact that it's not good for the environment for them to buy cheap clothes that don't last, right? And you throw away all the time.
Gen Z, okay.
Gen Z are, I forget the age group. My kids are Gen Z, so it's somewhere between when you're born between 2000 and now. So
okay.
20 years old or younger.
Okay, G.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gen Z.
Good. I'll try to remember.
All right.
Okay.
So then we have direct to garment, right? The big issue there is there's no sports and rock concerts at the moment. So when there's no sports and no rock concerts, nobody's buying T-shirts just to promote their favorite teams or bands.
In Japan, a little bit different. And I have some good friends in this industry, and they have online shopping and quite successful. It's growing. My impression. Yeah. So not throwing away, but no sports, of course, at this moment. No sports and no event, but still the order is increasing. No
So
negative news.
I think what could happen there is that once we go back to school and children are now want to belong to a club within a school, I think you could see this direct-to-garment come back very quickly. Already we're seeing some things like people wearing shirts saying, I survived COVID-19 or so, and these are all direct-to-garment printed.
Yeah.
So that is happening. Yeah. So they belong in a little club, right?
COVID negative or
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
okay. Okay.
And then there's dye sub. Dye sub, of course, is really two markets, right? It's soft signage and it's sportswear apparel.
Yeah.
Well, soft signage, that's affected by retail. And oh, by the way, the majority of soft signage was used also by trade shows and events because it's very light to ship. So your shipping costs go way down. Well, there are no events or trade shows. So that's been incredibly hard hit. And on the apparel side, okay, same problem. So not so good at the moment. Okay. Then last, we've got wide format. And of course, the big concern there is how many shops are going to be left. And the ones that are left probably will buy a lot of signage to draw you in, right? We're open. We have a special. Come see us.
Yeah.
And I think, we're humans like to interact with other humans. So I do think we will go back to these stores just out of curiosity, right? So things will come back. Housing and office for CAD printing, I think that's difficult, right? Although I have to tell you, these are all very local issues, of course, but the housing market outside of Boston is incredibly strong. But they say it's because most of the, generation that's between 25 to 35 that were living in Boston and that were renting now say we need to get out of the city. It's not safe. I don't want to be in a building with an elevator, right? Because I'm in with other people. I want to live in a house with a garden. And so the amount of houses, single family houses that are being sold at the moment is incredibly strong. Everybody's
really?
surprised.
Okay.
But it's those renters that want to leave the city. Right?
Yeah.
But that's a temporary issue probably. All right, ceramics, I think relatively, resilient, very much focused on China, and that will continue the way it was. And then other industrial, the big question there, particularly with 3D printing, inkjet printing, we're very worried, and I'll tell you why. So everybody's putting out wonderful examples of how they're making the plastic masks and 3D printing them and how great that is, right? The reality is that a very large part of that 3D market was sponsored or funded really by the automotive manufacturers.
Okay.
Because automotive manufacturers want to go to electric cars, they want to extend the range, which means that they need much lighter parts. They want stronger and lighter parts. So if you look at all the inkjet manufacturers, 3D manufacturers, a lot of their business came from BMW, Ford, Toyota, General or Motors and all that. And guess what? The car industry is decimated because nobody's driving. So your car is going to last longer. Cars are very expensive. And already people were thinking Uber, right? Instead of buying cars, particularly the younger generation. At the moment, all I see around here is people walking. It's amazing how many people are walking everywhere just to get a little exercise, and people are enjoying it. So do we really need all those cars? Big question. So unclear.
One question, sorry, Marco, one question. Recent trend before the corona, instead of buying its own car, another trend is sharing the car sharing. But that people now want to share the car with the people.
So, I don't think so. No, I think car sharing is off the table. I think what's in now is bicycles. Bicycles.
So I have to buy the, Shimano. It's a very famous parts manufacturer.
Yes, I have
buy the
Shimano
share.
components.
Good.
Yeah. But, you know,
Okay.
and by the way, it related to that is also offices, right? So same problem. Many of the offices have elevators. Do you really want to get in an elevator? And
Oh,
so now
okay.
they're saying you can only have 4 people in an elevator.
Mm.
So how long do I have to wait for my elevator? I mean,
Wow.
it's going to be crazy. So many of the business in the US are saying, we want you in our office, but only 1 or 2 days a week now. And so we will
Mm.
rotate the people so that
Okay,
the
okay.
buildings won't be so busy. And the
Yeah,
rest of the time you work from home.
working
So
from home.
yeah,
WH, yes. Mm.
yep. So most companies, by the way, big companies have given maybe $1,000 to each employee to buy new computer monitors and new
Mm.
printers for their home.
Mm. Mm.
Um,
Mm.
and that's worked really well for HP and Canon and Epson. They've had very good quarter in home printers.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, but no parts made in
yeah,
China. Part shortage.
but you know, it's a one-time bump up, right?
Yeah,
It's not
yeah. Mm.
sustainable. So
Yeah.
okay, so that's the market. So let's look at the numbers. So we have 2 scenarios we present. One is
Yeah.
what people call the V-shaped recovery, meaning we go down very badly, but we come back out pretty badly.
Yeah.
And so the way we've modeled it is the bottom chart here is the blue is hardware revenues. The
Mm-hmm.
orange is consumable revenue.
Okay.
And so if you look at the two, basically what this says in 2020, for all the markets, not just for, you know, a specific, but for all the 15 markets, we expect to see hardware revenues down
Down to
basically
half.
46%. So because we lost 25% of no sales in March,
Mm.
April, May,
Mm.
and we don't think people are going to come back very quickly. So, you know, for some markets, you're going to see this go down 70%.
Mm. Possibly. Yeah.
Like we're projecting in continuous feed inkjet,
Mm.
hardware sales will be down 70%
Mm.
this year
Mm.
because people just aren't buying new things. But
Mm.
the consumable revenue is only down across all these markets about
Yeah.
30%.
Mm. That's reasonable. Machine is working. Already placed.
Yes.
Machine is working. Yes.
And some applications have been fine, right? By the way, this is our big stroke of fortune in our industry,
Mm.
is that we have an annuity. And of course, the consumables are far more profitable.
Mm.
So if you are a vendor and you've been able to cut your costs,
Mm.
you may well find out that you're far more profitable at the end of it all as a percent of revenue than you were before,
Mm-hmm.
right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and that in turn then allows you to hopefully reinvest more money for future R&D. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, so our projections basically say, so sales are down, right, 46% in hardware. Then they jump back up to the point where they're down about 31% from
Mm-hmm.
what was the level in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time we get to 2024,
Mm-hmm.
we are basically back to where we were. We're certainly
Today.
back to all the consumable and maintenance revenues, and hardware is very close.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why hardware lags, of course, is we also will have quite a bit of gently used equipment that's
Mm-hmm.
coming out to the market,
Mm-hmm.
and that will slow things down as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our best case projection.
Is it the best case? Is it
Best
still the best?
I'm sorry, Ms. Ono.
Is it still the best case? So instead of V, maybe you're going to show L or something. L curve.
Well, yes. Now I have to tell you something else, okay? Because I know many of our Japanese friends think this is crazy and that it's much too negative.
Okay.
And maybe you're right. But part of the reason could be that we are also based in an area where Boston just peaked about 2 weeks ago in terms of deaths. We still have, I think, 200 to 700 deaths a day in Massachusetts. It's quite high. And we just opened up hairdressers last week. Restaurants are still not open. Right? Schools will be closed until God knows when. So it's quite bad here still. Now, Japan, right, you've lifted your emergency. You're going back. People are back in the office. So you're much further ahead of where we are, yeah, I think. And you know, depends where you are. Europe is also opening up. but we're worried about, the second wave potentially.
Yeah, second wave will come.
Particularly in North America, because I hate to say this sounds terrible, but there's a lot of people that aren't very smart in the US and they have bad behaviors, right? So they don't wear a mask if they feel sick. They don't wash their hands often enough. I mean, it's very possible that we'll see, people get hurt the second wave. But anyway, this is our V shape. Now, by the way, I don't have time to show you now, but that recovery is much faster for some applications than others.
Okay.
Right? So this is the market as a whole.
Okay.
The U shape, which is the longer one,
Yeah.
basically doesn't get us back to 2019 until much, much later, right? So the hardware revenues never come back to that level. Mainly because we're also projecting here that there'll be price erosion on the hardware. The other big thing that we haven't talked about, but I think this is going to be a very serious issue, is print is going to become much more expensive. The reason for this is that the volume of offset paper is declining much faster than it ever has before. So we have accelerated the decline of offset, we think, by about 2 years. And so what will happen is the number of mill closures is going to increase. And as there's less mills and the economies of scale are no longer so good, the price of paper is going to double in the next 4 years. That's our projection. So as the price of paper increases, that makes print all around a lot more expensive.
Yes.
So that then factors in to say, well, people are only going to print what they really, really need. So that's a huge concern. And I don't know where it's factored in here somewhere, but be careful on that, because that could have serious consequences. So what does it all mean? Well, we've painted a pretty sobering picture. We know that short term, everything is unpredictable. We just
of course.
I would even predict some of the large offset vendors are going to go bankrupt.
Not just on the offset maker, EP as well.
Well, there's only one Western, well, maybe two Western manufacturer, right? All the other EP manufacturers are Japanese. And Japanese companies do not go bankrupt typically. Right?
Okay.
So, that may not hold forever, but they merge. The banks may force mergers.
Possibly, yes.
But they don't go away. So anyway, the reason, by the way, why offset is in such deep trouble is because, first of all, as businesses, go out of business or merge, there's a flood of gently used offset presses coming on the market. And that makes it very difficult to sell somebody a new press. So revenues for new offset presses are going to go down 90%. And because they don't have a consumable base or very small compared to digital manufacturers, their overall revenues are declining. And now we're hearing it already. Basically, they cannot afford to maintain their service force because revenues have gone down so much. And so if you own an offset press and you can't get service, you're going to get pretty upset. And when it comes time to buy the next device, you're probably going to buy a digital device because
of course,
service is pretty good on digital, right? And it needs less service. So anyway, that's why I think the short term is very unpredictable. But it's very possible you'll see some big names go out of business, unless they're in packaging. But if they're in documents only, big problem. But digital print, we're okay, right? Because we have that ink and toner revenue. The other thing to watch is, what space are you really in, right? If you're focused specifically on advertising, things are bad now, but they'll get better. If you're focused specifically on trade shows, oh boy, that's going to take a lot longer to recover.
Right.
So you
if it happens, yes.
You better come up with different markets, right? And shift. And this is a very time-sensitive issue, right? Because if you're responsible for R&D for all your projects, where do you pull back and where do you accelerate? right? Do you put more money into development of inkjet flexible film packaging, right? Because that's going to be a good market once the technology hurdles are solved. Do you maybe not make the next textile machine and just hold off, right? So these are the big questions. The other big thing we're watching for now, and you've alluded to a little bit, is I think you'll see mergers and acquisitions, both, of course, on the print provider sides, but also on the print manufacturer side. So there'll be some smaller companies that will be acquired because they're very inexpensive, right? The big thing to watch for is what happens with a company that's based in the U.S. That has 5 letters. Their stock price is now, I think, below $12 a share. If it goes below 8, the company becomes so inexpensive to acquire that there'll be another company in the US with 2 letters that will probably be forced to buy this company because, because Wall Street will force it. It's not good strategically.
No.
But if you can find, there's no way there's 2 billion, but there's maybe $1 billion in savings. If you can put 2 of these companies together to get $1 billion in savings, Wall Street is going to love that. And
so finally, Mr. Aika is very happy to realize his dream.
There's been an extraordinary amount of drama, right? And it's terrible. But I am, I think it's very likely that by the end of 2020, you will see some of those mergers and acquisitions happen. So either the big one I just mentioned or maybe some smaller ones.
Okay, that may happen. Yes, I agree.
But by the way, there's another group called private equity. Think about, like in the US, we have Koch brothers and Goldman Sachs and the likes.
Okay.
Their philosophy is, now's the time to double down. We don't want to cut. We want to invest and buy businesses that have typically stable cash flow. So digital printing has fairly stable cash flow. So it's very possible that some of these private equity companies are going to come in and maybe even split up EFI, right? Because that's now owned by Series. But of course, EFI, they're in textile, which is hard hit. They're in wide format, that's hard hit. They're not selling any Nozomis, right? They're not selling any fiery rips for copiers because nobody's printing in the office.
Right.
So, if somebody came along and offered them a reasonable amount of money, I think that's certainly an option.
Yeah. Okay.
So, what I'd like to end with is maybe a more positive message. So I've painted a picture of this is what we think will happen. And, hopefully we're wrong. And if we're wrong, then everybody will be very happy that we were wrong. But if we're not wrong, at least we said this is what you should plan for. Long term, this whole pandemic is actually going to turn out really, really well for digital printing. And it's going to turn out well for the simple reason that how people buy print, the habits, are going to change dramatically. No longer will we have days where people buy print because it's the lowest cost per 1,000 pieces. They're going to want to buy just what they need when they need it, right? Because the waste that's gone on for years, decades, right, with offset print is now no longer sustainable. And that will work really, really well for us in terms of these short runs and digital printing. And oh, by the way, remember the cost of paper, right? As the cost of paper maybe doubles, that means that whatever I print has to have more value. Right? It has to be available just in time when I need it. That has value. If it has variable data, that has value, but not everything needs variable data or variable graphics. So in the end, I think what will happen is digital printing is going to become a lot more valuable because we're going to have to make it more valuable. And as that happens, we will displace more and more offset faster and faster. And we will actually start to displace offset. We said offset will never be replaced by digital years ago because the volume of offset was so large. But the volume of offset has really come down tremendously and will continue to go down. And that's what's making this difference. So, if anything is going to make our forecast more optimistic, it's that last bullet.
Okay, good. So thank you, Marco. Yeah.
That's my story.
Actually, that very interesting interaction. Just not a speech, but I got to make some question and with chat. I think this is a new style of a webinar. Otherwise,
I agree.
yeah,
It's much
it's
more
nice.
interesting when somebody asks questions, right?
Yeah. No. Actually, that it's yeah. Your time, your precious time is now expiring. So if audience has a question, they can ask me, and then I will shift it to you. And
Okay.
one last question. One last question. I think I do agree that your view that digital printing is going to in a very good position if we compare it with conventional printing. But out of this digital printing, I think inkjet is practically only choice because inkjet or EP is already technologically it's already pretty matured, and they focused on the print on the paper. A small exception with the film or something, but basically in office or something. So inkjet, even so today, as a market is still small and fragmented, you categorize as others or something. But each individual is, I think it's a lot of reason to grow. Even so today, it's small and fragmented. So I think after Corona, inkjet becomes a major technology for the digital printing. This is my view. What do you think?
Well, I agree.
Because I'm Mr. Inkjet.
I know,
Yeah.
and I love inkjet too, right? But
Yeah.
I think what will happen is that toner machines will certainly remain, particularly in commercial print, because they're relatively affordable, right? The high-end copier MFPs in particular, even digital presses. I think Indigo is going to be a big beneficiary, right, as these shorter run lengths come. Inkjet is on its way to solve the ability to print on non-porous substrates, glossy stocks, but we're not 100% there yet, right? We're making progress, but to do that at a level that's economical in the hardware side, we're not quite there yet. Now, I do believe that anything that's going to replace offset probably will have to be more on the inkjet side because of productivity reasons. You couldn't buy enough Indigos to replace all that offset. You have to have much faster technology, and that's where inkjet's going to excel. So I don't think we'll see a lot of $250,000 inkjet cut sheet machines. There's some, of course, out there today already, and I think they're going to do great. But I think the more and more the emphasis, as you say, is going to be on all these other applications, particularly in packaging, in 3D printing, all these decorative laminates, all the specialties, the fragmented. That's where inkjet's going to really shine. And so I think they coexist. The office market, of course, is going to be very hard hit. So toner revenues will go down. So if you look today at all the revenues of digital print, toner versus inkjet, inkjet accounts for about, I think, 25% or so of all revenue, and toner still 75%.
Yeah.
That ratio is going to shift dramatically as the toner revenues collapse, right? Because there's just not as much printing in the office anymore, and that was our main source of income in the digital print industry.
Yeah.
So yes, proportionally, inkjet's going to get much bigger. Yep.
Okay. Good. Thank you very much, Marco, again for your message is always very clear, and also your English is also very clear. So it is very very good for Japanese audience.
I
so
speak
I think
a little too fast, but okay.
Yeah, it's okay. So let us keep in touch, and I will make another opportunity for you to keep presence in Japan, and also maybe slightly with a different business model. Maybe that your speech has a value. So I think value must be remunerated. Okay, something.
All right.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So thank you very much again.
All right. Enjoy your morning. All right.
Thank you.
Ohayou gozaimasu. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye. Okay. このまま少しオープン、このままにしておきます。私は退出しますけども、アンケートを入れる場所、ちょっと今回私設定したかどうかドタバタしてて忘れたんですが、もしよろしければアンケート、あるいはそうじゃなければお問い合わせフォームかなんかから質問がありましたらいただければと思います。どうも皆様ご清聴ありがとうございました。失礼します。